Henry Louis Gates is a prominent black scholar, and he's a Harvard professor, a pretty well-known fella. I know who he is. I guess somebody in the police department doesn't know who he is, or a neighbor doesn't know who he is. Last week, police responded to a call that his house near the university was being broken into. It turns out it was Gates himself, just returning from an overseas trip. During the incident, the officer and Gates both contend they were being mistreated by the other person involved. That was the officer blaming him and him blaming the officer. The officer arrested Gates for, quote, exhibiting loud and tumultuous behavior directed at a uniformed police officer. Here's a picture of Professor Gates in handcuffs. Wow, outside his house. But today the charges were dropped. By the way, agreed to drop. Both he and the police agreed to drop it. In a release that reads in part, this incident should not be viewed as one that demeans the character and reputation of Professor Gates or the character of the Cambridge Police Department. This is a just resolution to an unfortunate set of circumstances. But does this incident shed light on how African-American men especially are treated by our police, by our justice system? Generally, Clarence Page is a friend of ours, always here. Pal of mine going way back.
Way back.
Chicago Tribune columnist. They're still our newspapers. And Michael Eric Dyson is professor at one of the great universities in the world, Georgetown. Sir, thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
So we weren't there.
Right.
Let's agree. None of us were there. But what do you think this is about? Clarence.
None of this makes sense, first of all. I mean, we know Skip Gates. I mean, 58 years old. He's about 5'7". He walks with a cane.
But he's got a neighbor that doesn't recognize him. She called 911, got a cop in there saying there's a burglary in progress. He shows up, Officer Crowley, I love the fact that everybody's Irish. He shows up and is told that the guy inside the house is a burglar by the neighbor.
Yeah,
so it isn't all his fault by any means.
This man's a superstar, not just in Cambridge.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, must have been the only person in the neighborhood who didn't know.
Clarence, you guys you're academic and you're lettered. You know who the guys. The neighbor didn't know who he was. The cop didn't know who he was. What do you think happened? And what does it say about America? Does it say anything at all, Michael?
Well, absolutely. First of all, your neighbor doesn't know you. You don't have to be famous. Just your neighbor. You don't know the guy. That's my point. You don't know the guy that lives next door to you.
She was profiling him.
Yeah. She saw his profile and called in. Yeah, this guy with the cane looks like he's going to beat me down. But the point is,
see, what I don't understand is she knew her neighbor was African American. He had a certain look. She sees a guy with a certain look. She wasn't profiling, or what was going on here?
Well, here's the point. America profiles, though, Chris. The thing is that the cop going to the house, when told, if we to believe Professor Gates, that he showed him his ID, he told him he lived in the house. I think what it was about is an uppity Negro syndrome. Let me be real with you. I think the fact that Gates had the temerity to signify on this guy. He wrote a book called The Signifying Monkey.
Well, he did say, I want to see your badge number. He did challenge him.
Of course. And I'm saying you black men don't challenge white policemen. Skip himself has said now in an interview, there are not many. I don't know many.
I've been trying to think this through as a white guy. If I've had my kids leave or whatever, there's no key. What happened to the key? I go in through a window. Right. If a Montgomery County cop saw me going in my own window and stopped and asked me for my ID card, it wouldn't have offended me probably. It would have ticked me off slightly, but probably not, because I'd be glad he was on the job.
It might not have been the same thing.
That's what I want to know.
The problem
in other words, it wasn't the action, it was the signal.
When police people show up at your house, racial profiling is dangerous because they can't distinguish the criminal from the guy who calls the police on the criminal.
Okay, play God here. Play God, play ACLU. What should have happened here?
Well, I think that, first of all, this should shine a spotlight on a bigger problem. Maybe it's HWB, housing while black. Maybe that's a new category of racial profiling.
Don't just add to this.
Let me tell you what.
This?
What did Skip Gates say? 1 million black men are in jail every day. I just became one of them. It forces us to see that there are a lot of black guys who don't deserve to be mistreated the way Professor Gates was. And because he was famous, he was able to get the charges removed. There are a lot of guys who are not famous.
You're saying that the prisons are filled with people who didn't commit the crime they were accused of.
There are a lot of people who have not committed the crime. And there are a lot of people who are assumed. But let me flip the script. There are a lot of white guys committing crimes who never get profiled and therefore get away with it.
Okay, let's narrow it, because I don't think you can do what you want. You're a professor. But let me ask you this. This situation here, what do we do about it? I've talked to people I know here who've said to me, you get stopped for speeding. Everybody occasionally in their life, generally might speed.
Yeah.
Some of those might get caught, okay?
Okay.
They don't always ask you to open your trunk.
Right.
I hear, in the case of an African American, that is very likely to happen.
Oh, sure.
All the time.
It's happened to him on I-95.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah. I got pulled over, and exactly right. Walked the line. I'm a teetotaler. I'm a Baptist preacher. I told him I was a PhD student in Princeton. He says, yeah, I'm the frigging president.
No!
Absolutely the truth.
A trooper or a policeman?
Trooper.
Well, remember, New Jersey was sued
successfully.
And he said to you,
and I'm the President of the United States.
President of the United States, because I told him I was a PhD student at Princeton. This was in 1986. So the reality, and before that, I was beat down in Detroit, Michigan. So and since then in Princeton and other places. My point is, as Clarence can testify, as I can testify, this happens repeatedly. I'm going to tell you this, if you want to know. White America would not stand by if this happened to their kids, to their husbands, to their children, to their menfolk who were constantly being herded up, looked at,
What happened
profiled.
here? Okay, what is this you're saying happened here?
I'm saying that Skip Gates, a famous black professor...
What did the police officer do wrong?
What he did wrong is, first of all, he didn't. When Professor Gates told him he lived where he lived and showed him his ID, that should have been it.
Wait a minute, no, this is in dispute, whether he agreed to give him the ID card.
Well, I tell you what, when he steps out on his porch...
No, let's get back to the fact.
Here's the fact.
If you want to play lawyer here, fine, but I'm asking you as an academic what we're learning from this thing. And the question I'm asking, if he cooperated with the police officer, he didn't. And if he said, I'm not going to give you my ID card, when the guy asked for it, that's a problem.
Of course, but
is a cop entitled to ask you for an ID card? Is a cop entitled to ask you for an ID card?
He is, but I'm saying to you, now you're asking about as a matter of trust. I'm saying a guy with a PhD from Cambridge, a guy who's
He didn't know that. The cop didn't know that.
I'm telling you, you know this, though. I'm saying
I know it now.
You know it now.
This is last Thursday.
No, but I'm saying to you, here's my point.
Yeah.
A black guy with all that credential can still be mistreated or assumed not to have.
But I'm trying to be clinical here. You don't know what the cop did wrong.
Anybody?
What the cop did wrong?
Chris, you got 6 cops here on the scene at a professor's house, 5'7", 58 years old. Don't you find a little suspicious now that the police say he did not show his ID?
Let me try this. How about the police got a call from Gates' house, and he didn't respond? You'd read that as they're not looking out for the property of a black guy.
I'm not going to be grateful because the police do their job. They ought to show up.
They're doing their job. They showed up in force, and he wouldn't show his ID.
Skip kept asking him for his ID. According to him, he walks out, and I have reason to believe him. So he walks out on his porch.
Because you know him. Well, the cop doesn't know him.
Yeah, but the cops assume everybody is trustworthy until proven otherwise. That's all I'm saying. And you know what? We always have these stories on black guys, not white guys.
Okay, let me ask, why do you think they both agreed to drop this case? Clarence.
Well, for one thing, I mean, we're trying to dissect something where we weren't even there. But what does common sense tell you? That Skip Gates refused to show his ID to a cop in his own house?
Okay.
I mean, no. Look, Chris, the whole point is that this is a racial eruption of the sort that gets America talking about what we're not normally comfortable talking about.
Okay, what I want to suggest is, let me try this by both you gentlemen, friends of mine. Could it be we're all carrying a lot of baggage? And the cops are carrying the baggage because they got crime statistics and stuff like that in their head all the time.
Right.
And he's carrying the baggage. I've been mistreated one too many times, and this is that one too many times.
Well, we all carry baggage. You know, I've had people say, well, why aren't you concerned about black-on-black crime that is killing black folks? But the fact is, we are concerned about it. But people really get concerned, though, when it's black-white or white-black, because that's what we have not resolved, and that's why we got to talk about that.
And if white guys were being mistreated this routinely and being murdered as they are by policemen, this would not be acceptable. That's why President Obama needs to use his bully pulpit to explore race, not run from it, not avoid it, but to engage it.
Well, I think he engaged it by getting elected last year anyway.
No, not at all. Not enough.
Well, that's
proved it.
Because you don't want to agree with that.
Not enough.
But you don't want to believe it. I'm an optimist and a romantic.
Skip Gates at Harvard getting arrested. It ain't enough, baby.
We don't know.
It ain't enough.
He's off. He's free.
You know what?
He's off. He's free.
But I got brothers in prison.
And they are, well, tell them to get a good lawyer. Thank you, Clarence Payne. Thank you, Mike Dyson.